Hello. Hey, Greg.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. So looks like everybody's joining on a little bit early. So we're gonna wait just a second because we've already got 17 that are on the line. So we usually go until about 5:40, just kind of general discussion and stuff as everybody's joining and just greeting each other and me trying to convince people to turn their cameras on and say hi. So,
Got it. Yeah, no worries. I'm certainly can be flexible to your schedule.
sounds good. Hey, Mark.
Hi,
Turning on the camera. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I'm seeing some familiar names on here. So if y'all have a chance, turn it on. Don't be shy. Hey, Kim. How you been doing? I saw y'all's big news with the merger or transition. I can't hear. I saw it came off of mute, but I can't hear you just yet. I don't know if the volume's down. I do show it off of mute. I just can't hear you for some reason. Which just means if I can't, I'll have to find a way to come catch up with you in person soon to find out how everything's been going. Okay. So, hey Chip, how are you? Hi.
I'm here. I'm almost home, so I'll turn on the camera when I get home.
Okay, that sounds good. How are you doing today?
I'm good. This is a busy day at work, but everything's good.
Well, we
Yep.
should have our next meeting for in person coming out before too long. That's actually going to be on the 18th and at the same restaurant at Portobello. So just trying to get all of that information loaded up so it can be communicated out.
Sounds good. Yeah. I should be in town. I don't have no work travel, so I'll be good.
Cool.
I'll be nice.
Cool. So we'll see if we can get Wayne out again too. So
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. So anybody else got any big announcements or past the PMP or any good news with job changes or looking for jobs or anything of that nature going on? No. Hey, Chris. So, well, I'll share with y'all because y'all are used to this at the beginning. So actually got a vacation scheduled. So I'll actually get to see Greg again in person when I go to San Antonio that week of Memorial Day. So, hey, Sean.
Hey, Tanya, how are you?
Good to see you.
Yeah, I just made it.
Good. So I'm glad to have you back on here. And Travis, I know you're here with the Lafayette crew too. Jean is as well. So
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, who's all from Lafayette?
Travis Broussard.
Oh, Travis, okay.
Yeah. I think y'all had met before whenever we were before COVID, when we were doing the meetings at Techno.
Okay, yeah, that sounds familiar.
Which sometimes I'm like, that seems like it's been a million years ago, but it's funny the way memory works. Like I remember meeting you for the first time whenever we had the Christmas party at Zed's, and there was maybe 6 of us that were there.
Yeah, and I was waiting at the bar because I ended up at the wrong section.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought we were meeting at the bar.
Yep. So we did that we actually kind of had an event like that in Baton Rouge last month where we got to tour Oxbow distilleries. So that was that was good times. So it's a way to work in how to see the different processes in Louisiana businesses. So
Yeah, absolutely.
you get creative with it. So. All right. Hey, John, how are you? Thanks for turning the camera on. So,
Yeah, sure. It's great. This is my first one I've ever made. So
I thought you had made several of the meetings before, though. Like I know that. Well, you're a PMI leader too, correct? Are you
I
still?
am, yeah,
Okay.
but
How's it?
it's a hard time for me. Usually I have a standing meeting, so I sometimes register and then can't make it because I got the standing meeting, but it was canceled. So I'm in.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it. See how you guys roll.
There's actually quite a few other people from different states that are different PMI leaders that have joined some of ours, but then we wind up getting into this thing that they're doing all of their in-person and their virtual meetings too, or their board meetings. So we'll wind up inviting each other to all of the different meetings, but then it's like you don't want to be meeting outward. You've got 20 something meetings every night for the month. You know? So it looks like, hi, Katrina. Katrina's from San Antonio as well. Is that someone you know, Greg?
The name does not sound familiar.
Okay.
Of course, I do know a lot of Katrinas.
Right, right. Well, I'm curious, even in the chat, or if y'all want to chime in, who all do we have from Texas on the line? Brian Smith, I know you're from Houston. Let's see. And I almost just have to go by memory. Let's see.
Nice to meet you too, Katrina.
I just
Oh.
wanted to give some time and say hello to Kimberly down there. I hadn't seen her in a little while. Hello,
Thank you.
Kim.
Let's see. So Kaylin is from Houston, working in Baton Rouge. And
Brian Smith from Recon. That's a company I haven't heard of in a little bit of time.
Andrew Ryder from the Austin chapter.
hey, Andrew. I don't know. I've seen you on a lot of the meetings. I don't know that I even realized that you were from that chapter. So, and that's
Yeah.
been
I'm the military liaison as well. So
okay.
I'm just have to work.
Cool. When we went, so PMI had actually had our Board Leadership Institute meeting in San Diego earlier last month. And there was a lot of different people that I met, that were military liaisons. And that's something that I hope to be able to do both virtually this year, as well as maybe organize in person. I haven't gotten started on that yet, but just always kind of thought that it would be very interesting to have like a panel of military leaders from the different branches that could chime in with their experience, about PMI and transitioning and just job advice and even different information on cost savings that are maybe available through some of those educational opportunities.
I hear what you're saying. At least in Texas, all the chapters or most of the chapters get together with, I forget her name, the Houston military liaison. Out of the Houston chapter, we do a virtual meeting. We did one, I think, back in April.
Okay.
And a bunch of liaisons from Austin, of course, El Paso, San Antonio, Dallas, and another place got together. We just kind of, shared stories with each other about how we're trying to get more built into PMI. And a lot of the contractors require the certification. Both of them are in Killeen, and drive down to Austin is a bit of a trip. It's almost an hour just to drive down there. What we're trying to
Okay.
push a Killeen satellite office with Texas A&M. So that's what we're working on. And, I got a meeting with them on the 17th.
Well, I think that's great. I mean, we probably know some of the same people in that. I've been seeing a lot of from Matt Quick, posting
Right.
very consistently. I don't know that I've met him, but we had met on, we kind of linked up on LinkedIn, but I try to follow that and just think about, okay, how could we tap into that locally? Because our board has 4 elected positions right now,
Fort
and-
Polk chapter.
huh?
Is there a Fort Polk chapter?
No, right now
Polk is it?
we are, there was a Northern Louisiana chapter and then a New Orleans chapter. So New Orleans chapter after COVID kind of, was non-operational after COVID. But from what I've heard, they're trying to get that back up. Chip, man, you might know some about that. And then Kevin McKenna, who is part of our group, I think is in the process of gathering some emails. But for the past couple of years, the Baton Rouge chapter has been the only one that's been operational, both on virtual and in person as well. So, but hopefully that'll change with more coming back up. So,
Okay. Sure.
Oh.
Yeah. COVID did a number on everybody.
it definitely did. I mean, but I'm seeing a lot of different energy from people this year. I mean, it sort of feels like there's so much transition with jobs, and there's transition from people, and they seem to be more willing to learn and take on new initiatives almost in 2023, even more so than they were in 2022. So I kind of hold that hope that it's going to get back. So,
Sure. Good deal.
well, just looking at the participant numbers right now, and I know y'all hear me say this every time, I think we had it was over 120 that signed up, so some more people will probably be joining us throughout. We do record these sessions as well, so for people that wind up missing it, the recording should be available on our website within the next couple of days. But let's see. I want to take this opportunity to thank y'all all for being here, and introduce Greg Proctor. A little bit of context about Greg. Greg and I met each other on LinkedIn. I guess it was either 2020 or 2019, and started conversations with one another, and actually had the opportunity last year to meet one another in person. And I think that his experience in project management and what he has gone through too, and what he's going to tell about tonight is really very, very impactful. But with that, Greg, I will let you introduce yourself too. So we've got till 7:00 tonight to start. So with questions and things of that nature, I'm going to help Greg with moderation, and kind of try and keep the meeting on track as well if everybody's got questions. So, all right, Greg.
Well, thank you very much, Tanya. I certainly appreciate it. You've been a kinder spirit, in my life. You've been a true friend, a supporter, and I certainly, my hats go off to you and Tim for all the support that you guys have given me over the past 2 years. So before I get going, since there's so many cameras off, I'm going to do something here that I probably shouldn't do. But for the first 3 people that turn on their camera, and should I say, send me, and I'm going to put in my information. I'm going to put in my information right there. If you send me your name and your email address, or should I say your name and t-shirt size, I will get you out one of our multiple myeloma t-shirts for the first 5 people. Now, my wife is monitoring that somewhere else, but I'm going to get going. So look at that. Look at the participation we've got right now. Everybody's all about t-shirts. I like that. Well, first, I'd like to get started by saying good afternoon to everyone. I'm excited to share how my experience in project control has helped transfer my cancer journey. As Tanya said, my name is Gregory Proctor. I'm a son, I'm a father, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a podcaster, I'm a senior project controls manager, I'm a veteran, I'm a cancer survivor, I'm an advocate, and most importantly, I'm a Christian. My story of adversity, perseverance, and taking control of my life is a story that I hope can inspire all of us to overcome any obstacles that we may face. Project management, as we know, can be challenging, and my 25 years in the industry has taught me a lot. I've managed and overseen some of the world's most complex projects totaling $150 billion across 8 countries since 2004. However, my experience in project controls became more meaningful when I was faced with some challenging times in my personal life back in 2012. My father passed away, contractual opportunities were diminishing, my second marriage was failing, and I was at a crossroads needing to make a decision. I chose to make that decision by leaving the country, and I moved to Peru, where I took on a recovery project for a mining company. I spent 3 years in Lima, Peru as the project controls advisor on that project before returning back to the US and working on a liquefied natural gas project for approximately 3 years. Eventually, I went back to being an independent consultant, which is where I am today. So at the beginning of 2021, while things in my life were on an upward trajectory, my concerns of my endeavors and my entrepreneurship was just flourishing. I mean, it could have been better. I started to develop lower back pain, which was agonizing. And the pain was so severe that I began to manage it with ibuprofen or Aleve. The pain got so bad that one morning I woke up and I couldn't move. My lower extremities from my waist down was agonizing. And so I reached out to my wife, who was out of the country at the time, and asked her if she, could basically get back here. And at the time for her, she was saying, "Stop kidding me. You're not in pain. You just want me to come back because you love me so much. I've been away." And I said to her, "Listen, sweetheart, this is something that is quite serious at this point in time." We sat down and we talked, and she said, "Listen, maybe you just need to get to the doctor and let's figure out what's going on." I proceeded to get myself over to the doctor, and after 3 weeks of numerous tests, MRIs, and finally leading to a spine management doctor telling me that I needed to see an oncologist, we knew things at that point in time were hitting a point of catastrophic failure. Not knowing much, we proceeded to our local oncologist, where she took on my case and immediately scheduled me for a series of more tests. By July 19th of 2021, I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma and deemed high risk. Receiving this news was quite devastating and quite the blow to my wife and my family, hearing the words, "You have cancer." Being as young as I was and without any pre-existing conditions, my oncologist alluded to, "You have to trust me. I'm going to help you through the process, and you should probably start to get your affairs in order." My life was turned upside down when I heard the diagnosis of multiple myeloma. Everything that I thought was going well was being ripped from underneath my feet, and I was facing a new adversity in life. An adversity with 2 sides of a price tag, or 2 sides of the coin, life or death. I was mentally checked out at that point in time, not knowing what to do, as if I was living an out of mind, out of body experience, and was begging for someone to wake me up from this bad dream. But, we can question the fact, what is multiple myeloma and how bad was it for me during my diagnosis? Well, at the time, I knew nothing of blood cancers, nor my wife or anyone in my family. And what we found out was multiple myeloma is a blood cancer that starts in the bone marrow, where the blood cells are produced. Multiple myeloma is caused by a type of white blood cell called a plasma, which becomes cancerous and grows out of control. And in my case, being deemed high risk, I not only had the multiple myeloma, but I also had a P17 deletion, which one of my chromosomes was deleted, along with submutated genes, which continuously put me at a much higher risk based on my immune system and the compromises that were going on. As I sat through that consultation and the treatment, I realized in my experience that project controls was very similar to the cancer journey that I was about to endure. They both required a set of processes, tools, plans, monitoring controls, and evaluating the situation. Project management was like riding a bike, except the bike was on fire. You're on fire and everything around you is on fire. However, I knew if it could be orchestrated correctly, the goal of ensuring a successful outcome and on schedule and on budget, in my case, saving my life, was reasonably achievable. The same applies to cancer. There's a set of processes and tools that, basically use to plan, monitor, and control every situation. I was motivated at that time to take my cancer journey under my wings and really try to stop feeling sorry for myself and stop having this pity party that I was going on in my mind. I knew that I was dealing with a diagnosis that would be tough, and the situation for me was something that was unfathomable at the moment. But as soon as I began to digest the news, I was able to clearly recognize through a dear friend's help that I knew that I could accomplish this. She reached out to me and said, "Greg, I've known you for far too long. The situation seems overwhelming and challenging. However, what you need to do is manage this project." And at the time, consulting all of these emotions and feelings and stresses and anxiety, you're not thinking clearly. Just like you're not thinking clearly on sometimes when projects are coming at you from all different perspectives. And so I realized at that moment in time, just by taking a pause and listening to her words, she said, "You should not let the project control you. You should control the project." After all, in her eyes, she always referred to me as the Clark Kent, the Superman. By no means at the time was I thinking that I was Superman. However, her words about getting my tools out of the toolkit and laying out an executable plan resonated with me to the core. This was a part of my DNA and things that I had been very successful at accomplishing for many, many decades prior to being diagnosed with cancer. After all, I could execute and achieve a successful outcome of these major projects, then why not apply the same rules, philosophies, methodologies, and principles to my own story? As I began to lay out my thoughts, it first came to mind who would be the project manager. After all, I was the project, the living, breathing project. As people say in project management and project controls, we live by, scope, schedule, and costs. And so for me, I proposed my wife at the time, and my wife rejected that offer because she was like, "We cannot possibly manage this as a project." And I said, "Well, listen," I said, "I can't possibly be everywhere at every point in time. The experience that I'm getting ready to go through and what I'm going to have to endure is going to be quite tumultuous. I say, you're going to have to be my eyes and ears." And I'm sure that terminology resonates with a lot of us that are project managers as being eyes and ears. And so I said to her, "You need to be the project manager," which would entail tracking appointments, monitoring weekly labs and tests, monitoring trends, aiding and controlling my side effects, and engaging with the doctors, plus educating ourselves about the disease. And I said I would focus on dealing with the insurance company, keeping the financial picture viable, and getting through 5 days per week of chemotherapy, which left me in a continuous brain fog for approximately 2.5 months. After all, from the onset of our discussion with our oncologist, we were targeting approximately 3 to 4 months post-diagnosis to be in remission, just as long as my body could handle the aggressive treatment and the outlook appeared to be possible on paper. Throughout my journey, I learned that success is not a failure, and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Cancer was a hurdle that I had to overcome. And so I did that with the same resilience and determination that I applied to my professional career. I was the project and my wife was the project manager, and I was determined to complete this project on time and on budget. Based on research and understanding the challenges faced by cancer patients, I learned about the destructive mental stress that blood cancer patients go through while fighting cancer and dealing with treatment and preparing for a stem cell transplant, as well as after the maintenance treatment and trying to get back control of my life while dealing with the financial hardship, the social views of them being broken without being whole. The destructive mental stress experience of blood cancer patients can be significantly impactful to the quality of life and the recovery. And so therefore, patients must be emotionally and socially supported through their medical treatment and helped manage through these challenges. But how do I overcome these challenges? These were all things that we were faced with as we look at all of the adversity that goes on with projects that we manage. And so my wife and I basically sat down and we said, okay, if we lay out the things that are tried and true to the project controls methodology, what do we need to start with? So the first thing on our register that we wrote down was hope. Hope is nowhere on the project management registry, but for us, in my particular case, I felt that it was significant because hope is a powerful tool that can help individuals overcome adversity. It provides a sense of optimization, beliefs, and things that we will better overcome in difficult situations. Hope gives people a reason to keep going and the fight and perseverance to get through the tough times. So for me, the number one thing that I needed to deal with in my hope was rekindling my faith with the Lord Jesus Christ. And I won't go into a lot of religion here, but being a project manager and always being on the road and having the type of stats that I presented earlier, $150 billion over the course of a 14, 15 year span in 8 different countries, wasn't a lot of time for me to stay connected, barely to my family and my daughters and my second wife back then, let alone with other, aspects regarding my faith. And so I knew that I had to focus that energy on rekindling my faith with the man above. Planning. Our planning efforts, which involved defining the scope and the objectives and the deliverables, well, we knew the first major milestone was trying to get me into remission. And the objective of that was tried and true, regardless of what it took. As long as it didn't kill me, we were focused on trying to move that needle in the most expeditious fashion because the severity of the pain that I was dealing with was causing me quite a bit of immobility where I could not walk. And so we focused our plans on working very closely with the doctors, which I have a team of 8, and ensuring that everyone was tied in and on board for ensuring that we would be able to achieve that goal. And for anyone on the call that knows anyone or that has gone through any particular type of cancer treatment, being on chemo and chemotherapy for 5 days a week for 2.5 months is a pretty significant undertaking. And so after we laid out this plan, we began to focus on identifying the risk that would be associated. And a lot of those risks came into focus with regards to my body being able to deal with the amount of drugs and toxic extremities that were being put into my body. And so we focused in on ensuring that as we move forward with the treatment, is that we were being very cognizant and very aware of all of the side effects and the things that we needed to do to kind of alleviate or at least minimize those symptoms. And so the risks were something that we were ready to take on and deal with as best as possible. And of course, eventually we prevailed. Our resource management, not only our doctors, our family, our friend, our support mechanism became very influential in the overall aspect of how we managed and coped and dealt with this period of time, primarily because we could not do everything on our own. There were certain things that we wanted to do in regards to not having so much medication go through my body and try to invoke some natural remedies that our family was working with us in conjunction with, particularly as related to diets and other various things that we could utilize to kind of help my body heal. And then, of course, monitoring and controlling, which obviously involves tracking the progress, identifying the variances, and taking all the corrective actions that are needed. We had a lot of things that we had to monitor and control throughout the process, primarily not only my treatment, but also our financial picture in dealing with the insurance company and what the insurance companies would pay, what they wouldn't pay, and what other grants and subsidies that we could get involved with to try and help alleviate the costs. And certainly, I'm sure you guys have all heard of the $6 million man. Well, in my particular case, on record today, it's cost me about $2.5 million for me to be in the position that I am today, to be healthy. And so the last thing that we wanted to ensure is that we had effective communication, which we all know is very, very important on any project that we work on. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I had a team of 8 doctors. 2 doctors in Dana-Farber, 3 doctors here in San Antonio, a couple of doctors in Florida, so just scattered about. And so one of the things we wanted to make sure of is certainly during this period of time, which was already very devastating and overwhelming, is to ensure that the inflow of data was going to work for everybody. So not only did we set up everybody on the distribution list, but every time we had labs and blood work and tests and things that were performed so that we didn't compound and repeat certain situations, we basically made sure that all that information was communicated out to everyone simultaneously so that everyone would be on the same page as us as we begin to move forward down this track. And so probably some of the most important things that came out of all of this was how we identify what we consider to be our 5 call to actions, which will be meaningful for anyone facing a major health concern or significant challenges in their life. Number 1 is basically take control of your life or your treatment. And I think that was so important for us because me being a project manager and having the years of project experience, sometimes if things are not thought about in a logical fashion, if someone came to me and said, we're just going to provide you with the standard of care and not clearly provide me with the definition of what standard of care is, logically for me, it didn't make a lot of sense. And so we took control of pretty much my life and my treatment plan to ensure that we were tied in with our doctors. And like I said, in unison. The second thing is we educated ourselves on the treatments and the condition that I had, because obviously knowledge is power. In dealing with doctors, sometimes, if you don't speak their language, it's very, very, very hard to get your points across. And they expect, not all doctors, but sometimes they expect that you just accept the information that they're giving you and you kind of move on. And I just knew based on the research and some of the things that my wife and I went off and did, that of course, not every drug was going to be beneficial for me. The third thing that we tried to do, as I alluded to earlier, was 1, rekindling our faith, but obviously staying positive and surrounding ourselves with supportive people and having the right attitude. One of the things earlier on that I knew, which was going to be very, very difficult because I am such a widely known individual and have so many great things going on in my life, was being able to try to communicate that out to the masses and trying to keep it in a way where it didn't appear to be dark and gloomy. And the fourth thing, as far as our goals, was setting realistic goals and measuring our progress, and obviously celebrating our achievements. The one significant milestone that I would definitely like to share with you guys, which was just a huge accomplishment for my wife and I, was in July, we were diagnosed. By October the 19th of 2021, I had achieved remission. And so we actually achieved remission pretty much right on schedule, right on target as we had originally planned with my oncologist. And then the fifth thing, which was a part of our call to action, was being able to give back, to help others, share my story, and inspire others to help them overcome their challenges. And there's a quote that I'd like to just share with everyone. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others, by Gandhi. And for me, I knew that not only the outlay of being able to save someone else's life and not have them go through and endure what I had to go through, but certainly the importance of being able to advocate as an individual that surely would want to ensure that things moved much more positively and much more smoothly in others' lives than what it had moved in mine, by helping them educate, by helping others be educated in the extremities of things that were important in dealing with this particular cancer. So as I end my discussion with you guys today, I'm happy to say that I am a cancer survivor. It has been a long and challenging journey. I've made it through. I'm grateful for all the love and support that I've received, not only here domestically, but abroad, and the support of all my friends and family and supporters. And so just to kind of caveat off of that before I wrap up, as a part of what I have done since my diagnosis, I've continued to exemplify a positive outlook while undergoing my cancer journey and offering relevant perspective on the disease through faith, strength, and courage. My mission through social media has always been to be a beacon of hope, a light that can bring forth positivity in a sea of darkness, and offering a voice of reason for those who may not have a voice. And promoting the "don't ever give up" has become a slogan, as I'm known for battling this hideous disease. So as a part of my multiple myeloma advocacy efforts, as a part of the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, I am the honored hero for the Visionary of the Year campaign here in San Antonio. I'm also a part of the executive leadership team for Light Tonight. I've been on several of their Bloodline featured podcasts. I've been on several of their nutrition programs in dealing with how to prepare proper diets for cancer patients. With Bristol Myers Squibb, I'm a part of the patient ambassador program. With the National Bone Marrow Transplant Link, I've been on several of their shows as a guest speaker promoting awareness around multiple myeloma. As a part of the Health Tree Foundation, I'm a multiple myeloma coach. I'm a patient advocate and also a featured guest speaker on Real Talk. And certainly, as I've put into the chat, I have a large social media presence, and don't be ashamed to reach out to me. Thank you guys very much. We can open the floor for questions.
Definitely. I mean, and I think too, even having the context and sharing the story, will help to kind of preface answering the questions. I know I've got a couple of questions and just want to understand more about the story too. So I know you've been in remission, but these other opportunities that came about as a result of this, and that are all actually super huge projects that you're managing now, as part of your advocacy, because this happened to you. Can you explain a little bit more or tell us how some of those came about? Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? How do you go about doing some of those things now to help educate and get the word out?
Sure, absolutely. So first and foremost, the Leukemia Lymphoma Society reached out to me. One of the things for me very early on after being diagnosed in July of 2021 was that I needed an outlet. And that outlet for me was, how do I get these emotions, these anxiety, these concerns out into the general public? How do I connect with others that understand what I'm going through? And so I took to social media, Facebook predominantly, which, has a lot of, different support groups, and got tied in with a variation of multiple myeloma groups and other different outlets that allowed for me and my wife to get educated and begin to ask some of those tough questions that we were not getting the answers from initially from our doctors, because when we were diagnosed, we had like 30 minutes, and someone's telling you something that is so life-changing and so altering to your future. We just felt like we were kind of gypped, in an extremity. And so through a way of Facebook, it all began with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. One of their national chapter representatives reached out to me and asked me to be a featured guest on a podcast. And from there, it transcended into me basically working with our local San Antonio chapter. And then the rest was like a domino effect. So, I mean, it just became kind of like a wildfire.
I do actually have a question, and this one comes from Tori Johnson. She says, as a project manager and she's a caregiver, what advice would you have regarding burnout? I've been a caregiver for a long time, and it sometimes feels like there's no time for a break.
Well, certainly, I know my wife is on this call, but she's not going to answer that question. But what I would say is, first and foremost is it's really, self-awareness and taking yourself mental breaks. I mean, as a caregiver, you have to understand that you are pouring all of your time, your love, your energy into someone that you're caring for. But in the same aspect, you can't forget about self. And when I had friends that would come in town and take me to treatment because I couldn't walk, they would tell my wife, first and foremost, this is your break. Go to the salon, do what you need to do, relax, enjoy it. We have Greg, so don't worry about him. We're going to take care of him. So that's the advice that I would give to you, Ms. Johnson, is ensure that you don't forget about yourself, because the burden of being a caregiver is something that it's a job that you don't get paid for. The only reward is knowing that your love and your unconditional support is there for the better good of someone else's life. But you can't forget about your own.
I think that is such an important message. And it speaks to me so much too, because I lost my mother to cancer. And at the time, it was, this has been some time now, but it's like even your story and just the impact of it and the reminder to me about hope and about project managers championing each other and the importance of empathy and the importance of recognizing other people's emotions and self-awareness. I think that message resonates so much, whether somebody is dealing with, an illness in any capacity or dealing with loved ones or friends, and just even the response system. And I know you and I have talked about this, and I kind of want to open it up to the group too, but even with you looking, for work at times and different opportunities and the challenges that you feel that maybe are sometimes faced because you're open and transparent about your medical history. Can you talk about some of that? Because I think other people may have seen it in those that they care about, or even coworkers that get a diagnosis and they don't know how to approach them.
Yeah. So certainly one of the things, obviously, that I was faced with right after what I would say starting to feel like I can get back to work again, was the fact of individuals, or should I say corporations, not having the compassion or empathy to be flexible. And one of the things that worked into my favor at the time was the fact that, at least from my standpoint, I could emphasize, well, the work will get done primarily because I'm able to work remotely. But I think overall, what cancer patients deal with in trying to plug back into, society and plug back into life is based on, folks looking at them as if they feel that they're broken, that they're weak, that they don't have the capability to be able to do the job. And that is totally, totally wrong. That is really, incorrect. If you ever want to find someone that has the perseverance, the resiliency, the strength, the courage, the resiliency to overcome, adversity, particularly when their life is at stake, talk to a cancer patient. I mean, those are going to be some of the strongest, will-minded individuals that you'll meet on the planet today, because they are fighting every single day. And let's be mindful, when you go through an ordeal like this, you may have been at 100%, but when you come out on the other side, you're not at 100%, but you certainly don't want people to treat you any less, with regards to your abilities to be able to perform. I still have fatigue. I still have things that go on with my body that, even though my stem cells and my immune system's being rebooted, because as I said, this all just recently happened, back in July of 2021, I had a stem cell transplant of February of 2022. And just last month, I completed a 200-mile walk, with regards to a challenge that I was on, just to prove that I'm kind of getting myself back on track. But I think to kind of answer your question there, Tanya, is the fact that society is a good thing in one, or excuse me, social media is a good thing in one aspect, as far as what you can and can't share. There's a lot of websites out there that talk about when you've been diagnosed, what you should and shouldn't share. For me, it was my mission to be able to help others. And so it didn't matter to me if a company was never going to hire me again. Well, it wasn't the right company for me to work for anyway, despite the amount of money that I had made for them in the past. So I just moved on, because the one thing that I've always told people when they ask me, Greg, your cancer experience, can you tell us, what did you really gain from it? I always use the word humbling, because my life was very, very chaotic. I was extremely busy, traveling 200,000 miles a year, working on mega projects all over the world, being the rescue guy, Project Controls 9111. I mean, it was hectic. And finally, when, this all happened and I had to put all that to the side and focus on the priority, me, then, things took a lot different perspective in my life. And so it humbled me, it grounded me, and it helped me understand where my priorities should be in life. And primarily, it still aligns with the things that I enjoy doing, except now it adds a more meaningful purpose in being able to know that as you're helping someone and as you're benefiting, that piece of inspiration or courage to someone else's life, it's not taken in vain. You're on mute.
Mute. Yeah, I know. I saw that. It was like, yep. So I said, I think that is so true. Did see a question that came through from Albert. He said, thank you for sharing your journey. How was the insurance company response to you not being able to, how did the insurance company respond to you not being able to work? Did you have coverage to pay for your long-term medical treatment causing you not to work? I heard you mention grants and subsidies and the 2.5 million. So normally, as I've shared my story, I try not to go into the extenuating details. But since the question was brought up, I'm gonna really go into detail on this. So hold on to your earbuds if you're listening to this. So when I was first diagnosed, my wife and I started spending just copious amount of time trying to figure out, what does my insurance cover? And of course, I have a national, health plan with United Healthcare, and basically we start reviewing the policy and going through all of the things with our representative and basically letting them know, I've been diagnosed with cancer. We want to know what's covered, what's not covered. Once we meet our deductible, how do we move forward? I mean, these were all things that we wanted to know kind of firsthand. And what we found out
is after we met our deductible is that my primary healthcare, United Healthcare Insurance, was giving me a slow roll. And so I am probably 6, 8, maybe 10 weeks into my treatment. And my oncologist calls and says, Greg, we're going to have to stop your treatment because your insurance company hasn't paid. And you've racked up a bill of $250,000 because you're burning $22,500 per week. And I'm sorry, Mr. Proctor, but there's nothing I can do. And so being the project manager that I am, I basically said to my wife, I said, we've got to negotiate with the doctor to buy us some time and figure out exactly how we can get the insurance to get off of their laurels and get engaged to do what they need to do. So I negotiated with my oncologist. We gave her pretty much a stipend of about $15,000 and basically said, okay, hold us over until we can get this resolved. Give us 2 more weeks. So we got engaged with the insurance company. We finally got that sorted out. And I indicated to my wife, I said, we cannot go down this path with the insurance company. Something else is going to happen. I had already applied for my veterans benefits, which I had been somewhat disassociated with the VA for many, many years, even though I'd served 8 years for our illustrious country. And once I re-engaged with them, they immediately denied me. And so it was very frustrating at the time. And my wife said, we need to go out and we need to look for grants. And so we found grants with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We found grants with other cancer networks that were able to float us a little bit of cash to kind of, move the needle forward so that we wouldn't deplete our bank account. And then I got involved with an attorney after I was denied with the VA hospital and basically presented my case with the attorney. And she said, well, Greg, there should be no reason why they should have denied you because based on what you used to do in the military, the probability, could be that this could have generated from that particular stint. And so we started moving forward with our case. And basically at the same time of moving forward with our case, we went back to the VA hospital, probably around October timeframe, November timeframe, got an appointment with the oncology staff there, went back through all of the gory tests that I had to go through again, just so that they could say, I have multiple myeloma. And then by December 10th, the VA stepped in and said, we will cover all of your costs, which was a blessing for me. Because to end this comment before you pop off of mute, Tanya, is the fact that if the VA wouldn't have stepped in, what would have transpired is my commercial insurance stated, we will cover your transplant costs. However, if there are any issues beyond your discharge, we will not cover you. And so there were issues. I had my transplant, which went on for 12 consecutive days. I was discharged for 14 days. And then I encountered high fever, was rushed back to the hospital, stayed in the hospital for an additional 8 days, which they diagnosed it as being engraftment syndrome, where my stem cells were beginning to reimpregnate themselves back into my bone marrow. And that would have cost us $865,000 that my insurance wouldn't have covered if the VA wouldn't have stepped in. You're on mute, Tanya.
I think that's I think that's important information too, even in understanding that, because none of us can imagine, unless we're placed in that scenario or have a relative that is in that scenario, can even slightly anticipate what the costs might be, what particular insurances might cover. I appreciate you mentioning that too, for the commercial insurance and even for the people that are from the military on the phone, even thinking about those kind of things, because I think that a lot of things in life, in our projects, we just have to get really, really, really creative in how we think about the problems or the things that we're facing and figure out alternate ways to get around it.
That's right.
And solve it. I don't always know. And with cancer, it's one of those things, I think the big question is, can you ever mitigate it? And it's almost like there's so much generalized advice on what you could do, but nobody really knows with that. So it's one of those things that you
Right.
can be preventative, but you almost have to be reactionary
Yeah.
once
Well,
it happens.
well, let me just kind of share a little bit more insight with you and the folks on this call. You know, anytime someone tells you to get your affairs in order, and it throws you back, it puts you into a very uncomfortable situation. And a lot of times it's good to feel uncomfortable, but it's not so good to feel uncomfortable when you start questioning, do you have enough insurance? Do you have enough savings? Do you have enough assets and liquidity to be able to kind of move forward? And when you think about all of the things that we had to deal with on the medical side, the one question that comes to mind is, you still have to live. You still have a house, mortgage, groceries, gas, this, that, and the other. And of course, when you're going to appointments 4, 5, 10, 5 days a week, that's a lot of wear and tear on whatever you're doing. And so for me, we got really creative. I mean, a lot of people were like, Greg, we're waiting for your book to drop because you're going to talk about some of that creativity. But, I used to be a coin collector, and I pretty much liquidated, my coin collection. We had other assets that, we put aside. We had, a little bit of savings that we had stashed away for rainy days and things like that. And, when you look at what you need to get beyond, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or possibly even longer before you have any substantial income, then that's where the question comes in. As you said, how do you mitigate? And you really can't. I mean, you have to have other people get involved to kind of support that, unless you're wealthy. And, I'm not. So.
So just reading some of the chats in here, Tori had mentioned, and I know Kim Shovian had mentioned too a while back, just that it's hard, what the challenges are in being a caregiver, and she had shared that both of her parents, had dementia, and just different ways that she went about taking care of herself. And Tori's sharing that her mother has multiple sclerosis and is on a fixed income, and just the things where she has to pay $400 a month for the supplemental insurance, So even as family members, friends, colleagues, just understanding those kind of things and being there for one another too.
Well, I think to add, based on, what we're talking about here, is that you really have to sit down and look at your entire, picture, financially, lifestyle, so forth and so on, just to ensure that you can weather the storm. Because ultimately, no one's ever prepared to hear the words cancer. And, in some cases, as statistics has it today, there's probably over 250,000 people that are newly diagnosed with a blood cancer, between multiple myeloma, leukemia, lymphoma, on an annualized basis. And, those numbers are staggering, and certainly just the treatment alone is expensive, but the maintenance care is even more absorbent than the treatment, because some of the pills that you have to go on could be anywhere between $500 to $1,000 per pill. And if you need these pills for 30 days, then you're looking at a $30,000 ticket if you don't have insurance. And so, I mean, it's kind of preposterous that these things happen the way that they do, which is one of the reasons why my involvement with LLS and some of these other foundations is really to kind of help push the understanding of what patients have to go through, and push the need for change, not only in policy, but also in legislations as well. You're on mute, Tanya.
I'm toggling back and forth. I understand all day too. I'm in a system where I'm testing, and I'm like, okay, toggle this way, toggle that way. So, but I wanted not wrapping up just yet. I wanted to mention something. This is kind of PMI housekeeping, I guess, just right quick for the folks on the phone. For those of you that are members of the chapter, the PDUs will be dispersed on your behalf within 3 to 5 business days. And right quick, and I'm going to drop this in the chat as well. For those of you that are joining us that are guests of the chapter, we do ask that you self-report on PMI.org. And that claim code, which I'm going to put in the chat, is C106CKS206. So I'd still like to continue forward. A lot of times I just have to remind myself to mention the claim codes, but
No worries.
I wanted, does anybody else have any questions too, or any stories that they'd like to share, or particular, just particular questions?
Hey, Mommy,
Hold on.
please. Wait.
Wait,
Oh. Okay, let me make sure that I've got this spelled right. All right, there we go. So one thing I know you and I have talked about, and I found this interesting too, is just even how your diet changed. I know I caught that YouTube video where you did the cooking show, and I love creative cooking. That's, a thing always doing the weekends is meal prep. So love to hear a little bit more about that and even how y'all managed that project as an outcome.
Sure, absolutely. So, upon the diagnosis, we started hearing things like we need to watch our sugar intake. We have to make sure we increase our proteins and other various things. And I would have to say, being on the road as much as I used to be and just developing bad dietary habits. But of course, I always maintained, good physical fit and stayed into athletics as much as I possibly could, even by being on the road, is that it was life altering and life changing. And of course, my wife, it really gave her the opportunity to really kind of push the envelope on forcing me to kind of eat more healthy, because now I've got my doctors saying, Greg, you really need to eat more healthy. And so, as you started to ask there, Tanya, the things that really changed for us is the fact that, number one, our mindset of survivorship is one of the things we really wanted to focus in on, because I never wanted to have to go back through a stem cell transplant ever again in my entire life. So when I stepped up to the plate to commit and really devote, my time and energy and my life stake and in being able to live, I said, whatever it takes, I'm going to do it, by the book, by the letter, above and beyond. And so I went from having what I would consider to be like, the occasional McDonald's or Burger King or Chick-fil-A, every now and then. I'd probably say 3-4 times, a week, because I'd be on the road or whatever the case may be, to now those things do not even exist in my diet at all. I don't drink sodas or juices or anything like that. I'm pretty much 100% water. If I can't completely comprehend what's in it, what it's made from, and there's no additives or preservatives or dyes or other ingredients, it doesn't go into my body. One of the things that my wife and I have done since all of this has transpired is we became a huge component of being able to make things ourselves. So, I mean, we were always decent cooks. And I think now we've become even better cooks because we understand, pretty much what's in, the things that we prepared. And one of the things that I love making, because I'm always on the trails and enjoying being out in nature, is that I used to eat a lot of granola bars, and those things are very high in sugar, fructose, and corn syrup and whatever. And so now I make my own granola bars, which the recipe is not launched for public knowledge yet or consumption, but it's basically 4 ingredients. And, you bake it at 350 degrees for 21 minutes and, you're good to go for a good week of being on the trail. And so those are the type of things that we change to cut out the sugars and cut out the additives and other various things that were going to be harmful to me, to ensure that each and every month as I'm getting blood work, is that my blood work would be right in the middle of the fairway. We didn't want to have to deal with any type of highs and lows, peaks and valleys based on what diet would do to my blood work. You're on mute, Tanya.
I was looking something up. I'm getting messages that the code doesn't work. So what I was trying to do was go on to PMI.org. I would ask somebody on the phone that 206. I think what I might have done is I think that 0 is actually an O. If somebody could test that for me right quick and let me know, that would help. And then I'll retype it again. That's one of those things. It's like whenever I create the meetings, I almost have to, project manager 101. I go and I create the template on PMI.org so that the PDUs can be dispersed against it.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'll have the habit of writing the 0 or the O and kind of flopping it around a little bit. Okay, so that worked. All right, it's an O. So let me retype that for consistency. Yeah, I can usually figure out what I did, but like sometimes it takes me a minute. Okay, now it's no, typing and talking, multitasking. All right, there we go. So, okay, it looks like,
Can you share more about how it went with
Yeah.
getting all of your doctors connected together so they will receive your labs and test information? Well, I will tell you, in the beginning, it was very, very hard, Courtney. One of the things that I had to do, which I've shared with Tanya on many occasions, is I had to develop what I call the water cooler method, which is something that I've utilized on a lot of different projects. When you're faced with just a lot of adversity, or should I say, people want to stonewall you in lack of giving you the information that is needed. And so one of the things I started to do was, as I said earlier, making granola bars. I started to bring in granola bars into my oncologists so that I can kind of like tamper their spirits a little bit, get them, nourished on the fact that, not only are they there to help me get better, but, also wanted to become, a little bit more acquainted with them. As far as my transplant doctors and PCP, spine management doctors and specialists, basically with all of them, I just developed a relationship in such a way that, I wanted them to realize that everything that my wife and I was doing was really for them to help navigate and guide us. And one of the things that was so significantly important above and beyond my oncologist group was the fact that my wife and I always had data. And you guys are probably going, well, wait a minute. What do you mean data, Greg? What are you talking about? Well, my wife at the very early stages started taking all of my blood work, whether it was a CBC panel or multiple myeloma panel or whatever types of tests, and she started charting all that information out. So as we went to the other doctors, we basically went to the other doctors already prepared with data and questions well ahead of them being able to sit down with us and say, well, we think we should do this, we think we should do that. And of course, for my wife and I, we were already trending these things. And so therefore, we would come in and say, well, we don't think we should do this, we think we should do that. And so our doctors started to go, we wish we had more patients like you and your wife, because you guys make our lives easier. And therefore, in the essence of our doctors, they became our navigators versus our dictators. And so we won them over by basically being able to be very proactive and being, well prepared for each consultation that we had going on through the course of my recovery.
I think that's the best way, just even advocating for your own health, because I've
Yes.
heard, just in cancer, just in a lot of things, a lot of different patients wind up having to do that and just having to have that data and even like you did with the insurance company, just
Yeah.
having your ducks in a row, which, Monica, I know he said you're not coming on camera, but I can't wait to meet you, in person, because that takes a lot of strength just to do that too, even being the caregiving and the advocating and helping, and you going through what you went through, and I mean, I remember meeting you before,
Mhm.
but even seeing those different posts that you were going through that. And this is kind of a funny story. I don't know if you remember exactly what connected us, and this may resonate with a lot of people on the phone.
Yeah, I remember.
It was Joseph Phillips. Joseph Phillips, the guy that teaches a lot of the PMP classes,
Mhm.
that has a lot of different Udemy courses, and there's a lot of people that actually still take his course
Mhm.
too. I remember making a comment on that, and we connected and just started a sideline conversation. And, so to me, and this was happening even before COVID, but like, especially since COVID, just meeting people that meet online in that environment just through random circumstances,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
later on translate to people that actually impact your life and become advisors that you can share project management tips
Mhm.
with, that
Mhm.
you can go to just even for advice. And some of the discussions, and people sharing things in here, I think all of us have had somebody that we care about, whether it's a relative or anything of that nature, that has been faced with diagnosis and things that we have to deal with emotionally. So I think
Mhm.
sharing your voice and being willing to talk about those kind of things, I think winds up helping people a lot. And when they're faced with certain circumstances, they can think about the messages that they heard and just even have that recall.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Certainly, I've heard all different types of comments in the aspects of, you know, Greg, you're very vulnerable, in sharing your story, but I use that vulnerability in a positive light, in a way that helps uplift others and bring forth a nourishment to their minds, to their thinking, and to their souls in the context of being vulnerable. Because folks that don't have a voice, that that have a difficult time in communicating with their doctors, or just are confused in how to move forward in these difficult challenges in dealing with the adversity of cancer, they resonate to those things, and it helps give them a sense of hope and uplifting in their lives, that allows for them to kind of move on. And one story that I'm going to share just briefly, which really touched my heart this past weekend, was the fact that I have a gentleman on one of my multiple myeloma groups that's always following me and commenting on a lot of the different posts that I put out there. And this was a Saturday morning. He wrote me and said, Saturday morning to 7 a.m. and, things haven't been going very well. I just feel like, I want to die. And I said to him, I said, Mr. A, can I give you a call right now? And he didn't respond. And I wrote him back and I said, can I give you a call? And he didn't respond. So I said a little prayer, basically wrote him back what I had prayed about. And he immediately responded at that point in time. And I was like, thank God, that nothing had transpired, because, the mental depression and emotional anguish that people go through when you feel like you're going at this alone is one of the reasons why I enjoy elevating and bringing forth the awareness, is because people should not have to go at this alone or by themselves. And eventually, over the course of the weekend, just maintaining contact with him as often as I possibly could was to kind of help bring his spirits back up to where he felt like he was comfortable again, and wasn't having such, awful negative thoughts in his mind that, this is what's going on, in his brain, and realizing that, hey, I'm ready to check out. Because certainly it happens to all of us, But, you've got to have the mental fortitude. You've got to have the perseverance. You got to have the, the faith, strength, and courage. You got to have a standard in life that you're able to garner yourself, against, to be able to kind of move forward in a way that, those type of things can literally just not impact you. And a lot of times I find that when people go through this type of experience in dealing with, a cancer like this, because it is incurable, there is no drug that's going to fix it. I'm still susceptible to the fact that it may come back, but in the same aspect, I want to be able to live a full life. You're on mute there, Tanya. Can you provide more information on how you use the second call to action to self-educate? How did you filter unfilter? Wow. Well, I will be the first to say that anything that you read on websites nowadays, particularly if they don't come back from a credible source, I mean, it is enough to scare you out of your pants. And when we first started looking up multiple myeloma, the causes of multiple myeloma, obviously the different variations of types of multiple myeloma, high risk, normal, this, that, and the other, it was very scary. It was very scaring. I mean, we started looking at things that were telling us the survivorship was 3 years, less than 5 years. And so, my wife and I are looking at each other going, is that possible? Is that plausible that you may not be around, 2-3 years from now? And so it put the fear of God in us. And so one of the things that we started doing is everything that we were able to gravitate towards that we thought was credible, we thought was information that we could utilize, we pushed that information back into a lot of the multiple myeloma groups that we were affiliated with, that we still are affiliated with on Facebook. And we asked some of the patients and some of the admin folks that were running some of those groups, these types of questions, because they were very active in being able to share their journey and their story to help ease our conscience and ease our mind. And then, of course, the more that I put out on social media, sharing my story, the more people contacted us and were reaching out to us directly and helping console us and helping offer us advice, coaching and guiding and mentoring us to be able to kind of weather the storm the way that we needed to. You're on mute.
I'm just nodding.
You should have the Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi remove mute.
I like when Tori said on here, we need to have a new board game. You're on our game show. Should be you're on mute, Tanya. Yep. Let's see. And I wanted to ask too, because Cipriano brings up a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Who on here, whether you want to show your hands or turn your cameras on, are members of the military, former members of the military? Love to acknowledge y'all and see y'all's faces. Okay. I love too that the VA finally came forward, and paid for that. I mean, and that's one thing, with the military liaisons, and like I said, something I was saying earlier during the meeting that I want to bring to the chapter, both kind of from a virtual panel and hopefully in person this year as well, is just advice on that, not only on this, but I think that there's a lot of benefits that people that have served in that capacity maybe aren't always getting back or realizing that they qualify for. And there's some different things, even in PMI, that, serving in the military does qualify them for as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for me, it was, I got out of the military in 92. Yeah, I'm probably revealing my age now. and certainly I used my GI Bill for college and other educational things. But after that, I mean, I was off doing, these illustrious project things. I was in the semiconductor industry and working for a multitude of different semiconductor companies and so forth and so on, and traveling the world. And so I just got away from my connection to, the military because it wasn't needed for me. I was tied into my civilian ship, and I didn't want to have to think about the military. And so my friend, the one that, in her eyes calls me Clark Kent Superman, she's a philanthropist as well as a nonprofit owner here in San Antonio. And, to congratulate her, she just sent me a text earlier today saying that she passed her registered nurse licensing exam. So she's now a registered nurse. She was the one that said, Greg, you need to check back into some of these services that are due to you. And that's how it all started. And, I thank her and I thank the good Lord above that everything worked out, because in a lot of cases, it doesn't work out. I mean, a lot of times people are just faced with the fact of, do they keep a roof over their head and can they feed themselves versus getting treatment? And so therefore their survivalship is a lot less than what they want it to be, because, the disease is still wreaking havoc inside of their bodies. And so, I agree with you. I mean, it's something like in my case, I'd stepped away from it, and there's a lot of benefits and services from serving my country that I probably still can tap into. But, the one that I am most grateful for right now is the fact that, they forked the bill on, a good portion of that $2.5 million, and they're still paying today. So, I'm blessed for that. And, I don't take that for granted.
Last thing I'd like to ask you to share, and this is kind of bringing it back to your project controls experience, but I remember exactly what the story was, but it was almost like you were telling me when I was in San Antonio about the impossible project at the very last minute that you pulled together with your project experience. Would you mind sharing that story with us as well? That was a fun one.
Oh my God. I somehow I knew you were going to bring that up, right? I see your cheeks getting red over there. Okay, so the Impossible Project. This project, let's see, I want to say 2000, was it 2017? Yeah, I think it was like 2017. Our president at the time was due to come to the liquefied natural gas facility that I was working at. And my, I guess, senior VP at the time said, Greg, I need for you to consider, how can you build 4 helo pads here out here at site so that the president can land? And I said, what do you mean so the president can land? I was like, why can't he just drive down the road like everybody else? And of course, it was a Jetties road, 2 lanes, bidirectional. And the Secret Service had basically said, well, this is not going to happen. He's not coming down that road because he would be a target. And so I was like, okay, so let me go figure out where we can actually put these 4 helo pads. And, to be mindful, we needed about, 8 football fields in order for these helos to land. And so I finally found a space on the property where he could land. But of course, it was in bog or swamp land. I mean, it needed a lot of work. I'm talking about rock, gravel, a lot of civil work. I mean, you name it. This was going to take a tremendous amount of time. So I went back to the senior VP and I said, okay, I need $5 million. This is going to be about 5 months. And, this is where we are. He said, well, Greg, this is not going to work. And I was like, well, what do you mean this is not going to work? He said, well, the president's going to be down here in less than 30 days. And I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, why didn't you tell me that before we even, started talking about this? So I spent the weekend with my team. And at the time I had probably about 35 guys working for me. And I needed to figure out how I could ramp up to about 100 in a short period of time. And I had a senior VP that was needing an answer within like 48 hours. So I spent the weekend estimating, working through this, calling, making all the provisions that I possibly could, and finally got everybody on board. So when the VP called me on Monday, he says, well, what's the plan? I said, okay, I'll sign up for it. He goes, you are out of your mind. I'm like, here it is, a guy asking me to do the job. He's now telling me that I'm out of my mind. He says, well, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm going to give you $5 million and I'm going to cut you loose. And I said, okay, that's all I need for you to do. Just give me the money and get out of the way. So my team and I had already talked, and I said, okay, in order for us to do this, basically we're taking a 30-day schedule, which basically I said at this point in time is going to be almost impossible to do. But I said we're going to have to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to get this done based on the calculations that we had extrapolated. And so we got into the project, and I had secured every pickup truck, dump truck, rock quarry facilities within probably like 100-mile radius of the facility to bring us rock and dirt and gravel to basically fill in this swamp, this bog, in order for us to be able to have a solid surface, to be able to put asphalt on, and to be able to have these helos laid. And I was probably 5 or 6 days into this project when I started getting wind that folks were betting against me. Folks had started putting money in the pot, basically saying, this guy will never succeed. It doesn't matter, come hell or high water, he's going to fail. They're setting him up for failure only to fire him. And I said, okay. I said to folks that I had found this out from, I said, if you've betted against me, you're about to lose your money. So within this period of time, it rained for probably 15 days out of the 21-day duration. And we still worked, rain, thunderstorm, whatever the case may be. We only took breaks, obviously, to get people out of the lightning as the storm passed and move forward. But we kept working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, being mindful of what I said, he gave me, roughly 30 days. Eventually, I told him, I said, I think we're on schedule to complete it in 21. And to be frankly honest with everybody on the call, we completed it in 17 days. Great project management. And of course, the president never showed up. So that's the real catch to it right there. You can laugh about that one. You're on mute, Tanya.
So how much downtime did you have to take after that one? Like, did you get vacation after that one?
No, I didn't get any vacation. I pretty much slept on the job site. People knew where my office was. And I just basically said, hey, I'll do whatever it takes to get it done. And once that was over with, I still had $200 plus some odd $1 million worth of infrastructure work on my plate. So, it was just back to being the normal day-to-day routine as it had always been.
So,
yeah.
Well, we've got just a few minutes left, but I wanted to open it up, kind of start wrapping things up. See if anybody else had any questions, or any comments. We've got right till about 7.
We don't have anybody on here that wants to be a featured guest on Cut to the Chase podcast. Nobody? Oh man, you need to go listen to some of those podcasts for sure. The epitome of government waste. Well, that project, even though it wasn't for too long helo pads, it turned into a big parking lot. So they're using it now.
Well, I wanted to say thank you, Greg, for taking the time tonight, and sharing your story with everybody. And I also wanted to say thank you to all of you who made time out of your schedules to join us on the call tonight. We always appreciate y'all showing up. Communications will be coming out soon on the in-person meeting in Baton Rouge, which that is going to be more engineering. I just saw the title today, but it's going to be Brian Briggs, who had spoken for us last year as well. We're going to be at Portobello's Restaurant on Thursday, May 18th. And for next June, I'm working on lining up something I think this will be a presentation from our current ATP, which stands for Authorized Training Partner, called PEAK. If you're on our webpage at the bottom, you can see that they offer services of different certifications through us. But they've got a presentation that comes the same night that we normally have our meetings, on the second Tuesday of every month, so June 13th, which is going to be about which Scrum Master certification winds up being the best out of the PMI certifications. Slight change on the time on that one. That one is going to be Eastern time, so that would be starting at 6 p.m. CST rather than 5:30. So hopefully we'll have those communications out soon and have that information available on the website. So y'all should start getting those emails. And just a reminder, everybody that's chapter members will have the PDUs out for you within 3 to 5 business days. And those of you that are guests, of course, we encourage you to join us if you have the opportunity. It's $30 a year for our annual dues if you're a member of PMI. And then the claim code was provided throughout. And if y'all didn't write it down, y'all can contact me at the president's email box afterwards, and I'll already send it to you. So.
Well, definitely. Thank you, Tanya. Looking forward to getting you on the trails when you get out here, and I'll have
sounds
your
good.
special bars waiting for you when you show up.
All right. That sounds good. So thank you so much, everybody. You'll have an awesome night.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.